The Ukraine war reaches a critical juncture. Moscow claims Donald Trump's circle is discussing a peace plan, while Joe Biden's administration doubles down on escalation amid shifting front lines. Kyiv faces mounting pressure, and the West shows signs of division. Here's more.
Ukraine's strategic thrust into Russia's Kursk region, aimed at disrupting Moscow's advances and strengthening its negotiation leverage, has backfired. Ukrainian military admits that Russian forces have reclaimed over 40% of the territory in Kursk, which Ukraine had earlier seized in August, and continue to advance in eastern Donetsk. Russian troops now continue to march, forcing Ukrainians to retreat. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky warns that his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin's ultimate goal remains unchanged: to fully occupy the Donbass and expel Ukrainian forces from contested regions. The shifting dynamic on both military and diplomatic fronts signal a potential turning point in the conflict. Moscow is saying that Trump's peace plan hints at a potential policy shift in Washington, contrasting starkly with Biden's hardline stance. In the last week, Joe Biden allowed Ukraine to fire long-range missiles inside Russia, sent controversial anti-personnel mines to Ukraine, and released fresh military aid.
Из круга сторонников Трампа и тех, кто был номинирован на будущие должности, будущая администрация, слово «мир» или «мирный план» звучит из уст представителей действующей администрации.
NATO's leadership, recognizing the gravity of the moment, rushed to the US to hold discussions with President-elect Donald Trump in Florida. The details are not known, but the military bloc is anxious given Trump's stance towards NATO. On the other hand, cracks appear in the Western alliance as France implicitly criticizes Germany's reluctance to provide long-range missiles to Ukraine. Facing crumbling front lines, Zelensky pivots, claiming that Ukraine has every chance to end the war next year. As Biden continues to arm Ukraine, which is in contrast with Trump's peace overtures, the Russia-Ukraine war now enters a critical juncture. The big question: when and how will the war end? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
For more on this, we have with us Professor David Dunn, Professor of International Politics in the Department of Political Science and International Studies at the University of Birmingham. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on WION. What are your thoughts about Moscow's recent statement that Donald Trump is talking about a peace deal on the one hand, but current President Biden is escalating the war?
Well, it's partly to do with the curious setup of the American democracy, whereby we have this 2-month period where we have the anticipation of a new president, but the reality of the old one. And what's happening there is that there's an indication of a change in policy. Whereas Biden said he would support Ukraine for as long as it takes, Trump has said he wants to bring the war to an end more quickly. Now, what that means, of course, is yet to be determined. But what we have then is a situation whereby you have one policy being pursued by the Biden administration of increasing the amount of arms sent to Ukraine and trying to shore up their position in the face of Russian escalation, at the same time as the Trump team are talking privately to the Russians about what the framework of that sort of agreement might look like. But the detail of that we won't know until Trump takes power in 20th of January next year.
And what do you make of the timing of President Biden's push. First of all, he's allowed missiles to be fired inside Russia. He's allowed controversial anti-personnel mines to Ukraine, an additional $275 million package to Ukraine as well. Is this to make negotiations perhaps better for Ukraine? Is this a last push in a hope that Ukraine will defeat Russia? Why is he doing this?
I think there are several aspects of this. As you indicate in your question, there is a desire to have put Ukraine in the best position possible for any negotiations that may well actually freeze the front lines at that point. And therefore, if Ukraine can be supported to avoid losing more territory, then that will be, of course, to Ukraine's advantage. And an aspect of that is that the Russians have escalated their attacks and their violence against aggression against Ukraine by bringing in 10,000 North Korean troops. They're using North Korean long-range weapons. They're using Iranian long-range weapons, and they're having supplies coming in from China. So what America is saying is that we are responding to Russia's aggression by changing the rules of engagement with regard to longer-range weapons in Europe. And the third aspect of this is, I think that because Trump has indicated a different approach to Russia, that the Russians won't want to respond by escalating even further, knowing that in doing so risks a wider war in Europe, when there's a prospect in 2 months' time of a president who will take a more lenient approach to their policy in Ukraine. So in a sense, the Biden administration is using this window of opportunity to actually increase its support from Ukraine, knowing that it's unlikely to provoke Russia too much.
Professor Dunn, thank you so much for joining us on WION. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon as we watch this conflict very closely, of course.
Indeed.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.